You're listening to Four Things to Know, a WCCO daily news podcast.
Today is Thursday, July 30th. I'm Johnny Kahner. Thank you for watching and listening to Four Things to Know today. Let's get to our top story. The New York Times is reporting today that the cyber attack on Minnesota's water systems this week was possibly the work of Iranian hackers. The Times says that's according to U.S. and state officials and others familiar with the matter. But they do caution that this is just the preliminary assessment and they have not definitively determined who was responsible for the attack. State officials say more than 30 cities were hit in this week's cyber attack on Minnesota water systems. City leaders, though, stress residents never lost access to safe drinking water and there was no physical damage to facilities. The New York Times reports that, quote, 3 state officials briefed on the investigation into the breach said the tradecraft used and the absence of a ransom demand had led analysts to tentatively conclude that it was the work of Iranian hackers. We'll, of course, keep you updated on what's to come. Number 2, Minnesotans accused of assaulting ICE agents are now having their charges dropped. That includes one woman who is speaking only to WCCO. Her name is Christina Rank. She's 25 years old, and she was arrested and charged back in January. It was all tied back to an incident outside of a school she worked at in Inver Grove Heights. Rank's case is one of 19 of which that judges have now dismissed, where the feds accused Minnesotans of assaulting officers during Operation Metro Surge. The same special agent got the ball rolling on arresting more than half of them. A review of court filings by WCCO shows that HSI Special Agent Richard Berger signed sworn affidavits in 11 of those now dismissed cases. Rank's case is among the latest. She was charged after an ICE car and her vehicle collided back in January. Rank said it should have always been clear that an ICE agent rammed her, not the other way around. Federal prosecutors dropped the case last week after admitting they did not have enough evidence to move forward.
It gives me some kind of hope that some of the judges are seeing that what they're doing and what they're saying is not accurate. But it's still scary that we're having to deal with this. Like, no one should have to deal with this.
In a hearing for a different case back in April, a federal judge raised concerns about Special Agent Berger's credibility, saying Berger signed sworn court documents describing events he didn't personally witness or have firsthand knowledge of. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Minnesota declined to comment. WCCO has also reached out to Homeland Security and ICE for comment. We have not yet heard back. Number 3, we're following 2 developing crime stories in the Twin Cities. Let's get to the first one. A man is dead and another injured in St. Paul. Police tell us just before midnight they responded to a shooting at an apartment complex on 7th Street East. They found one shooting victim outside the building and one shooting victim inside an apartment. The man who was outside died at the hospital a few hours later. Police think the shots were fired outside. They say they are working on suspect information. Right now, no one is in custody. This is the 12th homicide in St. Paul this year. And over in Minneapolis, another shooting at 1700 East Lake Street. That happened around midnight. Minneapolis police tell us a man was shot several times outside of a gas station. An ambulance got him to HCMC for treatment. Police say a possible suspect took off running through an alley. No one has been arrested in this case. Your fourth thing to know today, after being closed for more than 2 weeks due to wildfires, canoers and campers are starting to return to the Boundary Waters Canoe Area. The largest fires were in the part of the Boundary Waters called the Bear Trap. That's where about 35,000 acres burnt. But today, 41 entry points in the central and eastern portions of the wilderness have reopened for day and overnight use. John Lauritsen talked with outfitters in the area about what this means for their businesses.
It really depends on where they sit along the BWCA, but after essentially no business for the past 2 weeks during what should be the busiest time of year, this is indeed good news. Seagull Outfitters near Graham Ray is one of those businesses that believes a return to normalcy is close after wildfires forced them to shut down for about 20 days in July. Recent rains in the area have helped, and Seagull owner Grant Hopke, who has only owned the outfitter for 2 years, says they have a group scheduled to go into the BWCA on Saturday, but he says it could be a week or two before it's business as usual.
Seagull Lake and Saginaw Lake both have day use motor that is opened as well today, which has been a nice thing for our cabin guests, that they now can at least take fishing boats into the areas where they typically could. So we have seen a little bit of some traffic pickup today in relation to that, but it's still nowhere near the kind of traffic, the number of people we should be having up here at this time of the year.
And Hopke says during the time the BWCA was shut down, his business lost about $8,000 to $10,000 a day. He's hoping August and September can help make up for that lost revenue.
Those are the 4 things to know today. Let's get a check-in now on our next weather forecast.
Hey guys, 6 weather meteorologist Adam Del Rosso checking in. Some big changes on the way as we're going to be tracking an area of low pressure moving across southern Minnesota as we head into tonight. That is going to bring some much needed rain, especially from the metro southward, mostly while we're sleeping. With that system, it is going to keep our low temperatures up, so it's going to be a mild start to our Friday with overnight low temperatures right around 70 degrees, but we're not going to warm up as much for our day tomorrow. We'll keep some of those downpours around for the morning, maybe another isolated pop-up storm into the afternoon, but for the most part, I think things dry up as we head into the second half of our Friday. With this area of low pressure bringing in some relatively cooler air. High temperatures Friday afternoon are going to be in the upper 70s before our next area of high pressure moves on in for the weekend. That's going to bring a lot of sunshine with temperatures back in the mid 80s.
And now, here's more to know.
Now to a tragic update after a rescue mission at a popular park. A 16-year-old boy pulled from the water beneath Minnehaha Falls has died. The Minneapolis Fire Department says he disappeared under the surface while he was swimming with his family on the 4th of July. The medical examiner now says Saeed Husseini died several days later because of a lack of oxygen. He would have celebrated his 17th birthday last week. Now to the latest on a new crime team fighting within the Minneapolis Police Department. FAST stands for Firearm Assault Shooting Team. The unit was formed in March and is dedicated to shootings that did not end with a death. One of the cases they're focusing on right now is the mass shooting that hurt 9 people in Uptown earlier this month.
A non-fatal shooting is a failed homicide, and it's only a matter of time or a millimeter until someone is killed.
And that's part of the reason Lieutenant Andrew Schrader says the new FAST unit is so important. The homicide team is too busy and cases used to fall through the cracks, but with FAST, Schrader hopes the department can go from clearing around 40% of cases to 60% by the end of the year. He says that will have an impact far beyond just the city of Minneapolis.
50% of our gunshot victims live in the city. That means 50% of the gunshot victims live in Bloomington, St. Paul. Our violent crime in Minneapolis affects your city.
Officers from surrounding communities are also a part of FAST. The mayor of St. Paul is speaking up after accusations of sexual harassment. She says those texts were, quote, attempts at humor. Meanwhile, the chief of police's attorney is calling it, quote, illegal conduct. In an April 1st letter, Police Chief Axel Henry's attorney told the city attorney that Mayor Kali Her has, quote, engaged in illegal conduct towards city employees and that litigation is reasonably foreseeable. Included in that letter is a screenshot of a vulgar text message alongside a redacted image Henry's attorney says was photoshopped with the face of a St. Paul police officer. Police Chief Henry has not commented on the investigation, but the city has hired an outside firm to investigate these exchanges 3 months ago. Former State House Majority Leader Ryan Winkler, a close ally of Mayor Herr, said Wednesday he thinks there's a reason this story is coming out now.
The mayor can't speak in her own defense publicly without risking the investigation. So people have to recognize that this story came out not because the investigation was complete, but because it was in somebody's interest to release the information now.
WCCO also spoke with political science professor David Schultz. Schultz says what happens next could come down to findings of the investigation, public pressure, and trust.
On the one hand, we're a state where several years ago, activity engaged by Al Franken before he was a U.S. Senator forced him out of office. On the other hand, we're living in an era where we have a president of the United States who has been basically convicted and has been found liable for sexual harassment and remains in office. And so there's all types of conflicting signals that are going on out here.
The mayor says she has fully cooperated with the investigation since it started in April. We still do not know when the investigation is expected to conclude, but as of right now, Mayor Herr has not shared any plans to resign. Here's something you don't hear every day. Dolls are at the center of a new federal probe in Minnesota. The U.S. Department of Education says it's launched an investigation into the state education department because of what are called My Gender dolls. A team from the University of Minnesota created them. The company's website, which is not affiliated with the U of M, describes the dolls as a first-of-their-kind therapeutic play approach designed for gender-diverse children ages 4 to 10. There's also an option to join a wait list ahead of the dolls' launch. The Trump administration says parents complained about transgender dolls being used in Minnesota schools. They also said they were created using tax dollars. But the U disputes that, saying the team received no state or federal dollars to support the development of the dolls or commercialization efforts. Governor Walz's office told us the program was not developed or funded by the Minnesota Department of Education and is not being implemented in Minnesota schools under the Walz administration. Okay, let's get to some sports headlines, a couple fun ones to get to today. Let's start out in Eden Prairie, where the Stanley Cup is in the house. Here's Mike Max.
Check this out. You win a Stanley Cup, you're from Eden Prairie, and the people show up. That's Jackson Blake, just back from winning it with Carolina. He's got a new contract. He's got everything. And today, he's giving it back to the Eden Prairie community that he grew up in. And the crowd is unbelievable. They stretch out about 3 blocks just to get a glimpse of the Stanley Cup and pay tribute to one of their own. It's a good day in Eden Prairie.
Always fun to see the Cup getting back into the community that helped get the player there, in this case, Jackson Blake. And Blake, he's not the only Minnesotan on that team to win the Cup. Mike Riley as well, you might recognize the name. He played for the Wild for a bit and is a former Gopher. And then Keandre Miller, who I actually played youth hockey with a long, long time ago, like 15 years ago. He played at Hopkins, then Minnetonka, and then a couple other places before winning the Cup with Carolina. So that's got to be a fun day with the Cup. You only get one day with it, so you got to make it count. Looks like Blake is doing that today in Eden Prairie. Football over in Eagan today. It's day 2 of Vikings training camp, and of course, all eyes were on the quarterbacks yesterday. And we did hear from both Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy.
You know, I think for me, as I get to prove myself by, the plays that I make, being around the guys, it's easier for me to continue to open up, be more vocal. And I think all that naturally comes, especially when we get out here, play games, practice, and just being around the guys more.
It's always a constant look myself in the mirror at the end of each day, and did I get better? And just focus on what you can control, how you can improve, and just, when you're done with it, looking back and seeing where you're at.
To baseball, the Twins lost last night to the Royals, so we're now back to 1 game under 500. Final game of that series is this afternoon. MLB trade deadline coming up on Monday. And to hoops, the Lynx are in Toronto tonight, and these two teams actually played on Tuesday as well. The Lynx won that one by 7, and tonight is a 7 o'clock tip-off. It should be another Lynx win.
It's time to take a breath with your Daily Bright Spot.
Well, we know the Minnesota State Fair is just around the corner, and there's a lot of new attractions for you to check out this year. Let's get to a couple of them. There's going to be a new Ferris wheel that's even bigger than the one that was on the north end, and this one is going to be called the America Wheel. It's themed to celebrate America's 250th birthday. It's the world's largest traveling observation wheel. Guess how many feet? 230 feet tall. That's actually 75 feet taller than the great big wheel that was on the fairgrounds. And get this is pretty cool. They say you can see up to 14 miles in every direction when you're on the America Wheel. Another thing I wanted to touch on, in the North End Event Center this year, there will be an exhibit called Ultimate Dinosaurs. There will be life-size skeleton casts, real Minnesota fossils, and augmented reality interactives. And the Coliseum is also undergoing some renovations as well. Now, the State Fair starts in 27 days. Yeah, it's just around the corner. And at the very end of this bright spot, I have a fun event tonight, going to Chris Stapleton, checking out the new Mystic Lake Amphitheater. Very, very excited to see that show. So I'll have a full report on the amphitheater tomorrow. Should be a fun time out there. Well, I'm Johnny Kahner, and this has been 4 Things to Know. We're here with the news you need, of course, every weekday afternoon by 3 o'clock. Thanks so much for listening today, for watching us on YouTube or Spotify. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a good Thursday night, everybody.
Listen to 4 Things to Know, a WCCO daily news podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.